Well, welcome everybody. It's just terrific to see all of you with us today. And I am especially excited to welcome our panel of distinguished speakers in honor of Black History Month, sharing their reflections on mentorship, sponsorship, especially in an environment where, as we are seeing today, so many of us continue to be in a remote environment where it can be hard to be seen. And I think these are speakers who have a lot to say on this topic. I want to also just thank our co-chair of the program committee of the organization TechPACT, Denise Fleming, who conceived of this idea. Denise, welcome. I'm glad that you could be with us. And also we'll talk after this panel very, very briefly about the purpose and mission of TechPACT, and hope all of you will sign our pledge and become involved. Denise, is there anything that you'd like to say to kick us off before we turn over to Marcus, our moderator?
I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and hope that you will be enriched by this panel and what they have to share on some of their journeys over the past 2 years and how they have been able to navigate this virtual world to continue to progress and contribute. We look forward to having you at future TechPACT events as we really continue to focus on our mission of ensuring that technology careers and opportunities are available to everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Denise, thank you. And would you just introduce yourself briefly? I realized we kicked off without doing that, but just maybe tell the audience where you're from.
Absolutely. My name is Denise Russell Fleming, and I am the VP and CIO for Boeing Defense, Space and Security, based out of our headquarters in Arlington, Virginia for defense.
Thank you, Denise. And I'm Bertina Ciccarelli. Denise and I are both board members, founding board members of TechPACT. My day job is the CEO of NPower. And with that, I will turn it over to Marcus, who will lead our dynamic panel.
Well, first and foremost, hi, everyone. Again, Marcus Carter, he, him. I am the Director of Social Equity at Cinder. We're looking forward to having a great discussion today. I have to first start by thanking the amazing panelists, Kato and Ty, for your willingness to share insights and experiences. Also want to thank TechPACT for prioritizing this discussion. And of course, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you who have decided to tune into this conversation. So thank you for your energy and attention. Now, with that said, both panelists have a wealth of wisdom to share. I'd love to start this conversation by having y'all just introduce yourself and giving the audience maybe context for your experience. And so maybe Ty, we could start with you first.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for the intro to the intro, Marcus. I'm Ty McIntyre Bray. I'm currently the Director of Consulting Services at CGI Federal, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of CGI Incorporated, which provides IT and consulting management services to the federal government. So my background, I have former military service. I was in the Air Force for 15 years. And after that, joined federal civil service for another 12 years, all in various phases of IT, from tactical communications to program management and some pretty exciting projects at the White House. So during this pandemic, I transitioned out of federal service and for 4 months now have been in corporate America.
Awesome. Kato, interested in hearing from you.
Thank you, Marcus. I am Kato James. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Deloitte Technology. In that role, I oversee our IT governance and our enterprise technology strategy, of course, in alignment with the global CIO. I also lead enterprise architecture, data mastery and analytics. I'm responsible for all of our IT operations, IT business management, including quality and service excellence, executive reporting, our enterprise PMO, our vendor management office, as well as software asset management. I also partner with our people team as an executive sponsor for our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I have spent the bulk of my career in professional services. While I've been at Deloitte now for about a little over 4 years, I spent a little over 18 years in technology with our competitor, EY. So that's my journey. That's who I am.
Awesome. Appreciate y'all sharing that and just giving some context. Well, let's get into it. My first question of the day really is the virtual world has many challenges. One of those is having a presence and being seen. I'm curious to ask, what have y'all done to remain visible in the virtual world, and what would be your advice to others? So feel free to take that in any direction you'd like.
Okay, I'm happy to start. At Deloitte, we are so used to operating in a virtual model that it's second nature to us. But that said, it's certainly a challenge when we are forced to be virtual and there are new team members coming aboard and a new culture you're trying to create and sustain. We really did find ways to make it work, though, through town halls, open lines of communications, any forum or dialogue and connection that we could find. This hybrid workplace for us is the new reality. We probably are no longer going to necessarily just hop on a plane, for a meeting in London. But there are still plenty of ways to stay connected and establish those relationships that I think are critical. For us, I think it's really on each of us to reach out to people proactively. That's what I've been doing, setting up time to talk with my colleagues and leaders outside of formal meetings or project work, really trying to get to know them and letting people get to know me in a different context from, a camera in my home. I really believe real connections are still possible virtually, given all the technology that we have at our disposal.
For me, my story is probably a little bit more personal. So I took advantage of the opportunity working remotely while I was at my last job to go back to school. So as the organization was trying to incorporate artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, and blockchain, I saw an opportunity to go back to school to understand how that could apply at an enterprise level. What are we going to get? How is it going to make us meet strategic and organizational goals? And was able to do it virtually. So being an executive working full time, I couldn't imagine taking on the course load that I did with face-to-face, and UVA afforded me an opportunity to do that. So I think a lot of staying connected transcends whether or not you're virtual or in person. At the end of the day, you need to be deliberate about your engagement. You need to have a clue about what you want to do and how to get there, and lean into the environment that you're faced with, whether you're virtual or not.
I love the call out about staying connected and also just letting people know you, getting to know other people, but letting them get to know you. I think I often find myself in situations in which I may be asking a little too many questions and not opening up and giving people a similar response, if you will. And Love talked about going back to school in a virtual environment. I mean, that's the way to take advantage of that. Maybe related to this question of challenges in terms of visibility, I'm curious, what are other challenges that Black employees are facing, in the workplace right now beyond just visibility, or at least, I say right now, but really the last 2 years?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it first. So, the last 2 years, we've been faced with a myriad of challenges regarding social injustice, political concerns, really hard issues to deal with and go to work. What's been different for us is we've, as Black people, have been dealing with these things our whole lives. But usually these sorts of discussions, these sorts of concerns were taboo in the workplace. And we have been faced to confront them head on with the environment. So the good news is, our voices are being heard. Corporations, businesses, organizations are more intentional about the dialogue. But what I think is missed sometimes, an acknowledgement of the trauma that we're really experiencing. So we see something on the news and all of a sudden there's panels for us to discuss broad and openly how we feel about it. Moreover, after the panel's done, where are the actions that are being taken to really get us in a place of resolution?
I I look at this question, try to answer it. I think, as a Black female technologist, I'm looking at the employee experience from those combined perspectives. The ongoing challenge for me, especially in the technology industry, is that it remains a male-dominated field. There is still, women still only make up about 25% of technology workers, and Black women, even fewer, less than that, 9%. And I think that's been even more exacerbated over the past 2 years. Because you still have those same challenges of trying to be heard, or making sure that you have a seat at the table now that the table is completely virtual. I think that we have some of the same challenges that we started with 2 years ago as it relates to parity. I think from my perspective at Deloitte, we're taking the right steps. We're doing all the right things to advance in all of those areas. I think across the board, we just need to move a little faster.
Love it. I agree on the sense of urgency by all industries, all workplaces. And just to continue to build on this question, I think it makes sense to ask, what have you seen? Are there explicit actions in which you've seen organizations have done right as it relates to acknowledgement and then producing initiatives, actions that do serve, Black and Brown and other communities as well?
Yeah, so I'm 5 months into my CGI journey, and what I have witnessed is definitely deliberate actions to make sure that employees are connected, that there are resources available not only for mentorship and professional development, but actions that people can take to help move the ball forward. So I would say having employee resource groups are essential to making sure that people are checking in, and also addressing some of the hard to discuss and hard to address directly challenges that we have as Black people in developing the pipeline that we need at the executive level and making sure that we do have a seat at a table. So I would just say that CGI, we're seeing more and more resources. I'm digging in. So far, so good.
I would echo that. I think at Deloitte, we're over the past two years, I've seen really transformational type change in this space. Simple things like access to data and actually having the conversations are just, they're being held at different levels in different rooms all the time. So I think we're making significant progress. New programs, aligned sponsorship, attention to having diverse employee panels, hiring, interview panels. Across the board, I just don't think there's a stone that Deloitte's left unturned. And the conversation is at the highest levels of our firm. And it's an open conversation. And I think that's what's different over the past 2 years. There is a lot of attention to at every level. And I think we're making, really significant progress.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, Mark, is to some of the attendees, who may not view it the same way. So they're not at Deloitte and CGI. They may be in an organization where it's not as evident that there are deliberate actions. What I would encourage them to do is just to challenge it. Just stay connected. Some of the barriers, of course, in a virtual environment is, well, I don't know anyone. Are they going to take my call? Give it a try. As a new person on board at CGI, oftentimes, we'll just handle business via email. A virtual introduction seems to be good enough. Well, I'm very deliberate at making sure, especially if I find that this is somebody that's going to help me, that I set up a 30-minute, hi, how are you? I'm Ty, I'm new. And that pays big dividends. You'll get some allies. And if you're off course, they'll lead you in the right directions. So I encourage, folks, even if there's no clear program or you don't know how to get tapped in, just connect with someone and you'll be surprised how far you can go.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because some people just don't have all the resources, right? And so we got to start somewhere, and it is by building networks, building a community, if you will. And Ty, one thing you said that I think is necessary for us to dig deeper into is this concept of mentorship, right? You brought that up, and I'd love for us to talk briefly about maybe how mentorship has impacted our careers, how you yourself may have been a mentor and or a mentee, and yeah, just love to hear any thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, I mentioned a little earlier about my military background, and that's ingrained in us. Someone's going to snatch you up and make sure you're headed in the right direction. So mentorship to me is like a direct involvement. Your mentors are the people who are going to help you kind of plot your course and give you advice on how to execute. They're going to let you know about the pitfalls, and they're going to check in often with you to make sure that you reach your goals. I've been fortunate enough to mentor others. I've had great models, and some of the same advice that I got very early on in my career, I apply today. One, I think, is really notable in this virtual environment is that a mentor told me, think about who you want to be in this situation and in this environment, and then just go be that person.
Yeah, as it relates to mentors and sponsorship, I think I had a blessed life. I feel I literally started working in technology as a 10th grade high school student and on a summer apprenticeship program, and got a mentor literally at that point in my life who transformed my life. So I've always had excellent mentors. It was later in my career that I learned the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I wish I'd learned that lesson probably a little bit earlier, because I personally collected mentors like shoes. I mean, if I met someone, saw they had a characteristic that I appreciated, this person needs to be my mentor. But learning the difference in mentorship and sponsorship really was eye-opening to me. That a mentor really can help you traverse the entire professional landscape, but a sponsor really can help you get your next role. They can help advance you. They can speak on your behalf in rooms that you're not in, and really understanding that everybody needs help, not just women in technology, but everybody in technology or any industry needs help to get to the next level. And it's that level of sponsorship that does that for you was really a career changer for me.
Yeah, I would just say also, I think, a lot of, when I was first entering the workforce, there was a belief that if you just work really, really hard and you show results, that magic would happen and you will climb that ladder. But today we know that it's essential to have not only mentorship, but sponsorship to help you get to those executive levels. Without that, you're not going to have the network you need. You're not going to have that advocacy that you mentioned, Cato, about speaking up for you. In this environment, we need sponsors who are in a position to take risks. Because the difference between a mentor and a sponsor to me is the sponsor is going to take a risk on their reputation, their social standing, their business standing on you. So as a protege, what do you have to offer that they're willing to take that risk? How can you demonstrate that it's going to be a mutual benefit?
DeFi or DeFi?
Yeah, I appreciate y'all sharing this. And so just to dig into this a little bit more, what's an example of you acting as a sponsor to someone, right? Because typically we hear examples of being mentors. Well, what's an example of you being a sponsor for someone?
Oh gosh, I have lots of examples where, I've mentored to me, that sponsorship relationship happens organically. So I've had situations where I've been a mentor to someone, where I've literally just been advising them, being that partner for them in that space, but developed a relationship where I could attest to their work ethic. I understood their career aspirations. I won't give a name, but a person that I've worked with for many years, championed, really getting her not only promoted to the next level, but to move out of what was a technology function into a consulting function, because that's what her career aspiration was. I happened to know someone that could help us in that space, made the introduction, shared my work experience, my mentorship of this person, and was able to really make that connection and help transition her into a role that she aspired to be in. So, I mean, that's an easy example, but it's an example of really using my relationship from a mentoring perspective that organically transformed into a sponsorship perspective, where I felt really comfortable reaching out and finding a connection for her and advocating on her behalf to move to a different role.
Yeah, I would say, I benefit from sponsorship in this instance here. I was invited to speak on this panel. That's an opportunity that wasn't organic to my organization. It's someone that said, "Hey, Ty, I think you'd be a good fit for this panel. We need to talk about getting you that exposure and giving you some opportunities to meet some other people and hear your voice."
Love it. Thanks for sharing. Just one more time, think about the nuance of mentorship and sponsorship. Do mentorships ever expire, or has there been, maybe, caution as it relates to mentorships? I think that is often a lost conversation that many folks have to navigate. And so, yeah, just curious, sort of pros and cons of mentorship, or do mentorships actually expire?
I think some do, and I think sponsorships expire as well, but the right mentors and sponsors, part of their role is helping you get new mentorship, new sponsorship as you traverse your career, as your, opportunities or your desire for different opportunities change. Yeah, I certainly believe that sponsorships can, live a lifetime, but they also do help you get to the next one.
Yeah, my take is just a little different, because real time, I had to reach back to some of my mentors that I worked with maybe 25 years ago. So, we're techies in this forum. I've been so far away from, actual technology, and I was in leadership roles. So I had techies that worked for me. I didn't have to touch the technology personally. But the role that I have now in business development, I got to get a little closer to it. So there was an area, cybersecurity specifically, that I just wanted to dig a little deeper in. And, the people you work with sometimes don't have the time to train you up, nor are they interested in training you up. I quite honestly, if you do, right? So I called a master sergeant who trained me up as a second lieutenant. Sergeant Ricketts and I hadn't worked together for over 25 years. But he was still somebody that I can call, and now he's consulting and helping me get squared away. So there are phases where it's more intentional and deliberate, but I could say that I have a lifeline that I can always reach back to some.
Awesome. I appreciate that framing of like their phases to it. And so I love that. Just switching gears a little bit, Ty, I know you've talked about navigating career transition with increased responsibilities and doing that, again, in a virtual environment in the middle of a pandemic and all that comes with that. And so what do you feel has either, helped you be successful in that regard, and or what advice would you have for others who are transitioning during this time?
Yeah, so I think the first part is kind of understand your role, right? So coming into a new environment, understanding not only what's expected of you, but how are you contributing to the overall organization's objective, right? So in business, how are you contributing to growth, right? If that's your job. And then if you're still trying to figure it out, what steps or who else is involved to help you meet that, right? I think a lot of what you do, regardless again of platform, is about being self-aware of what you bring to the fight, understanding where you want to go, and being intentional about getting there and letting other people know, right? There's a sense of vulnerability you have, especially starting something new, regardless. You need to lean into that vulnerability. You need to take bold, crazy risks and just do what you know has been successful for you in the past in this virtual environment. So, no longer do you have kind of like the cooler talk or the after meeting kind of chat, right? The meeting after the meeting or the meeting before the meeting, but set up those environments virtually. Do a follow-up call, do a pre-check prior to going into any engagement. Lean into the platform, use the tools. One of my pet peeves is if you're speaking, turn on your camera. that you can't get more visible than that. Show up like you're ready to perform. Your leaders will notice that.
So for me, I think I didn't change companies or professions at all in the middle of the pandemic, but I did transition into this role of Chief Operating Officer for Deloitte Technology. I guess it's been about 8 months now, so in the middle of a pandemic. But I was pretty lucky. Prior to becoming the COO for Deloitte Technology, I had the extreme privilege of serving as the leader of the Office of the CIO for Larry Quinlan, who was Deloitte's CIO for many years. That experience really positioned me well for the next step. And we talk about mentorship and sponsorship. He's a prime example of both. He mentored me and he championed me. And really his servant leadership style helped me evolve as a leader. I learned every day leadership skills just sitting next to him, So additionally, I knew we had a strategy, in place. I knew I would have the right team at the right time that would really help us to continue to deliver the best to our clients through this pandemic and really position Deloitte's technology organization as the best in the industry. Even as we were in the middle of this, our biggest technology transformation in our organization's history. So this pandemic has really, I think, given us all an opportunity to tap into our strengths and really exercise, flexibility and optimism.
Yes, I love it. Appreciate y'all sharing that. And I'm trying to slowly take notes while looking at the screen, if you will. One of the things I'm thinking about is, let's be honest, there's been economic, impacts, especially to the Black community as it relates to, the workplace in this pandemic, if you will. And so I'm curious, what do you think helps Black employees, stay and or what are reasons they might leave as well? I think that's, necessary to address that given the inequities folks are navigating.
For me, I really think a lot of the responsibility, for embedding DE&I values into the culture of any organization really lie at the leadership level. We need to set the tone at the top for our behaviors and our actions, our words. And I think that is what encourages people to stay or go at the end of the day. From the very top, I think we as leaders should speak up and step forward, in order to support people, the people we lead. Whether it's speaking up by just asking the tough questions, challenging ourselves, calling out inequities and disparities, challenging each other to just eliminate unconscious bias, because that we all know that is a foundation of a lot of the inequities that we all experience. And really starting the conversations that we need to evolve an organization. I think that's what keeps people there, here, or the lack of those conversations is what motivates people to leave. Additionally, I think while providing, resources and tools and programs are really important to foster, a real DE&I culture, but we really need to focus more on ensuring our people feel that they are represented throughout the ranks, regardless of your background, your attributes. representation matters, and focus on that, I think will pay dividends.
Yeah. I think another piece of it is about being authentic, right? You know, when you have mentees or proteges that are that you're working with, especially if they don't look like you, right? So there are a lot of programs, or there's some programs today, I won't say a lot, where executive leadership has taken the reins and they're having programs to do sponsorship. One that comes to mind is, I think it's Cisco, that has the multiplying effect, where executive leaders are signing a pledge to sponsor you know, people of different ethnic backgrounds, and they're holding their colleagues accountable. Seems like an excellent program. I have friends that, you know, rave about it. But the other part of it is making sure that you're just not checking the box, right? This is my person. I've checked the box. Now we've met this goal. You know, mentorship and sponsorship requires like real talk. What am I doing right? And what am I doing wrong, moreover? And if I am, being courageous enough and bold enough to get me or get that person on the right path. So often I think there's a hesitancy about, you know, whatever implicit, unconscious bias people may have about really getting to the root of it. But without that concrete feedback, then I'm not going to excel if I'm that person, right? And then I'm not going to be represented. And then I am going to leave because I'm not going to be valued enough to get there. So I just think authenticity is essential. Making sure that you're providing action plans or real dialogue to help the protege and mentees get to where they need to be.
Yeah, I love this point about authenticity, and maybe just to drill into it. I think for allies, sometimes folks feel like they can't be wrong and still be authentic, right? Like everybody wants to not say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And maybe I'm asking y'all, it's like, it's okay to make mistakes as long as you can honor and be accountable to those things. And so I'm curious if y'all have any insights and can speak to that.
Yeah. It just makes me instantly think of, it's a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that, you know, you don't remember the words of your enemy, but the silence of your friends. Yes. Right. So I think it's in that same vein that allyship is just so important. It used to be, you know, you go to a Black History program or event and it's only Black people there, you know, but just the fact that there now, when you go to a Black History event, there's a diversity even in the audience. It just feels good. It matters. Allyship is so important. So it's stepping up to be a mentor or a sponsor. Anyone can be a mentor or a sponsor, you know, to really champion the next generation of diverse leaders. It doesn't have to be a Black person to sponsor a Black person. You know, anyone can be that mentor or sponsor. You know, really embracing inclusive behaviors. That's what's really needed to make real progress and help change the culture of any organization. We all have to educate ourselves and be in constant pursuit of eliminating unconscious bias. I think that's extremely important. And then I think from an ally perspective, speaking up when you see instances of injustice or bias in the working place, just even in the smallest of microaggressions, you know, being mindful and being willing to say something is, I think, the best way. I think that you could tell any non-Black professional in technology how to support the inclusion, you know, of Black people.
Yeah, and I would say sponsorship doesn't only include just that kind of one-on-one relationship. One of the things that I'm most impressed about at CGI again is that the sponsors of the we call them member resource groups as opposed to employee resource groups, are not necessarily of the same background of those groups. So if you have a white person that's the executive sponsor of the Black Alliance organization, not only does that give them insight to some of the challenges, but it also gives you insight to some of the successes and opportunities. And what better way to connect with Black talent than by participating actively in those organizations, or maybe even sponsoring a program itself, a luncheon, an engagement, or a panel. I mean, just taking deliberate actions to learn more about the talent that you have and how to keep them going.
Appreciate y'all sharing that. I do want to pause just for a moment because we talked about challenges of this virtual environment, but what has been rewarding about the virtual environment?
So I don't want to say this is for me, it's kind of hard to discern, right? Because I just see virtual as a platform. It's just a means to communicate. I think that access to some degree levels out a little bit if you're deliberate, right? If you're deliberate about it. We're all in the same, general meetings, whereas no one's in the back of the room, not some people at the head of the table and others in the back of the table. So you have a voice if you use it, whereas sometimes proximity would be a barrier in itself.
So for me, I think there have been lots of positives with this entire pandemic, and mainly just some of the basics that adversity makes you better. It makes you figure out ways to do things. It drives innovation. So I think there have been a multitude of positives that have come out of this pandemic. Who would have thought that you could host a gala via Zoom, remote? Who would have thought of just the myriad of innovations that are now going to drive a hybrid experience, the ability for a really robust hybrid experience, so that you don't have, for those who are challenged with the travel or didn't appreciate the travel as much, now there are opportunities or options to be just as engaged without having to do the travel. Personally, for me, I am a busy person, very busy person, but this whole being remote gave me opportunities to, while working as much or more, still to do a lot of the extracurricular type of activities that I craft, I cook, I do all sorts of things that you can't do necessarily when you're on the road. It gave me opportunities to do that. I'm working on a PhD. It gave me opportunity to lean in more on that. So while I'm doing even more at work and really focused on innovation. So I think adversity always makes you better. This has been an adverse 2 years and I'm coming out of it. Like I hope most of us are, better than we went in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also, it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate your resilience. Being able to lead in the middle of change is a key component of executive leadership. And if you can be innovative in the way you engage, in the way you promote your organization's goals, then that's going to let you stand out. And then there are going to be increased opportunities for you to excel in that area. So resilience has been key to this virtual environment.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Again, I feel like sometimes as we navigate these discussions, we know there are challenges, but there also have been some pros. So I want to make sure to include that. I think a couple of things. One, I love the call out earlier just about what allies can do to create and continue to sustain inclusive and equitable environments. Maybe just thinking as we potentially wrap up what are some takeaways? Because I think there's been a lot of talks about sponsorships, mentorships. We talk about being authentic. We've tried to acknowledge, some of the prior inequities that now maybe shift, and still exist in this virtual environment. But what would be some takeaways, or how would you summarize some of your thoughts and ideas for everyone on the call?
At the end of the day, you need to own your space. You are in control of your career to the best of your ability. And what we're finding, right, is that if you're at an organization where you're not being heard, where there isn't a pipeline, of people that look like you, executive level, board representation, then you get to make a decision on how you want to move. For our leaders, you need to be mindful that we're looking, especially now. You'll find that I think it's something like 54% of the Black working adults are like reconsidering where they're going to go, their next move. We've heard about the Great Resignation. Well, a large part of that is there sponsorship? Am I being heard? Am I being promoted? Am I being appropriately compensated? So you define where you want to be, figure out who do you need to engage to help you get there, and then measure the organization on whether or not they're going to be able to meet those needs. And if not, look at your options there.
I'll echo everything that Ty said. We're nearing the end of Black History Month. And for me, Black history is really becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. And to become the best version of yourself means that you have to dig in. You have to take advantage of mentors and be a mentor. Certainly seek sponsorship, be worthy of being sponsored. But as well, you have to help someone along the way. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no one that has achieved any measure of success, whether they're Black, white, brown, green, or purple, that's done it alone. And I learned that from Larry Quinlan. He says it all the time. But to me, from this conversation, I think it's even more apropos that we all focus on what am I doing individually to help someone else, to mentor someone else, to be a sponsor for someone else, to be conscious of my unconscious biases, to call out microaggressions when I see them, to work diligently to make my organization, with my contribution to my organization, make it the most equitable place for everyone to be and to achieve their career objectives. Those are my takeaways from this conversation, and I hope all of us, lean in to try to contribute that to our individual workplaces.
Thank y'all so much for that. And I can't help but to think, as I was listening to y'all, knowing that we are in Black History Month, I think a lot of organizations, a lot of folks hear the conversation about representation, but they don't actually get to hear what is the impact and what has that meant for professionals. And so again, tying in, it is, like I mentioned, Black History Month. I promised the last question. What has representation meant for you? Because I don't think enough people hear what has been the impact of that for folks.
I can speak to that easily with that. Representation matters. I have had a great career. I'm a technologist at heart. I've really been working in technology literally since I was in the 10th grade. I've never not had a job in technology. I've had great mentors, great sponsors along the way. But when I was at a career inflection point, didn't even know I was at an inflection point at EY, when I met Larry Quinlan, had he not been a Black man who was the global CIO of Deloitte, I never would have left EY. To see someone that looked like me in that seat gave me a level of comfort to leave an organization where I had built a wonderful career, where I had support, mentorship, and appreciated the work I was doing. But seeing someone like me, that representation gave me the courage to move, to take an opportunity, to move to something else, which has then led me to having, even more career success than I probably would have anticipated for myself. So representation matters at every level, whether it's from ethnic or race perspective or gender perspective. Representation matters.
Yeah, there's nothing more to add to that. It absolutely matters. But, don't be discouraged. Just come up with a plan if you don't see that representation. Ask the hard questions. Be bold. Why isn't there representation? Or what is your organization doing to get there? And then when you're there, just like you said earlier, who else is coming behind you? For those of us that are in those positions, you're absolutely right. We have to take our own checks to make sure that we're building a pipeline as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I want to say I deeply appreciate all the insights y'all have shared. It's never easy to have these conversations out loud. No matter how many times you do it, I can speak personally, you still get the little butterflies and you still think through your thoughts. And then once you're live and present, you just got to stay with it. And so again, deeply appreciate y'all insights. Next up, I think I'll turn it over back to TechPACT. But again, appreciate y'all and appreciate everybody who's listening to the conversation.
Oh my goodness. I just want to start by thanking Cato, Ty, Marcus for your incredible insights. And, we've talked a lot today. Ty, you introduced the topic or the word authenticity. You talked a lot about risk and courage. And I want to thank all of you for being courageous and saying out loud so much of what is often at times not said out loud. And I think it's because of that we've just gotten so much practical advice and some calls to action today that all of us could benefit from. Cato, I deeply admire your optimism, grounded in what you are seeing in real investments being made, in equity in the workplace, and the movement that you acknowledged. So I think that's encouraging for all of us to hear. And Marcus, I'm especially personally grateful that you introduced the topic of allyship. What all of us could be doing in listening and checking our unconscious biases and being conscious of them, and what we could do to offer support at every level. It's just, I have gotten so much energy and inspiration from this group. I want to say thank you. I want to thank the board of TechPACT and especially share with everybody, this is a volunteer-led group, right? This is just a whole bunch of people who feel very passionate about the mission of representation in technology at every level, as well as bridging the digital divide. We have a CEO, Kim Saxton, who you've seen in the chat, who's amazing, serves as a volunteer. Faith Hawley, who is overseeing all of our programs, a volunteer, as is the board. And I would encourage you to learn more about TechPACT. Go to the website, techpact.org, and sign the pledge to do everything that you can to help increase representation in the tech sector by the end of the decade and to bridge the digital divide. Once again, I really appreciate everybody attending this afternoon, and a special thanks to our panelists. Really remarkable words and wisdom today. Thank you.